Hey there.
Hello.
So here's the conversation that you need to have the next time somebody comes to you and says there is just no proof for God's existence.
So you have proof of God's existence? I'm all ears.
All you have to do is remember to ask these two simple questions, and you never have to get caught off guard again.
I was hoping that you're going to provide proof of God's existence, but now I have my doubts. What's this about two questions?
Hi, if we haven't met yet, my name is Lori.
You can call me iSkeptic.
And one of the things that I am on mission to do is to help Jesus-loving women just like you become a force for cultural course correction in the areas of faith, family, and freedom.
I'm not exactly your target audience then, but I am interested in what you have to say if you're going to provide proof of God's existence. I, like most of us, have pondered those big questions. Is there a God? How did everything come to be? Why is there something rather than nothing? Stuff like that.
Anyway, I hate getting caught off guard with questions that I'm not totally prepared for. You know what I mean?
I can totally relate.
When was the last time somebody asked you a question, you kind of fumbled for an answer, and then later you thought, oh my gosh, why did I say that? Why didn't I just say fill in the blank?
I remember how difficult these sorts of questions were for me from my days as an evangelical Christian. I remember taking church courses in how to defend the faith, as we put it. Looking back, it makes me cringe.
Well, that happened to me yesterday. It was an easy question. I totally knew the answer. I just hadn't thought about it in a while. And so I tried to give it some flavor and totally tripped all over my words.
Perhaps proving the existence of your God just isn't possible. That would explain why you tripped over your words.
It happens all the time with those of us who are Christians. Anytime we are getting asked questions about our faith, because you and I are so comfortable with our faith in Christ, we don't always think about the harder questions from an outsider's or an unbeliever's perspective. So what do you do when you get asked the question, why should I believe in God? How do I even know there is a God? What proof do you have for the existence of God?
Those are great questions. Do you have answers?
The first thing I want you to do is to ask them, what do you mean by proof?
I knew it. You're instructing your subscribers to answer the question with a question. This is a common strategy by Christian apologists. The goal is to respond to a question without actually answering it. In doing this, apologists give themselves the opportunity to sound smart even though they don't have a good answer to a question.
Ask them to clarify what they mean, what they're referring to when they use the word proof, because quite frankly, what they usually mean is something like 100% certainty, which is a little bit of a ripoff, because something that might make me very certain of God's existence may or may not make you certain of God's existence.
And that's a good point. We're not all wired the same when it comes to the issue of certainty. I'm convinced of it. Some of us just need more or better evidence than others to conclude that a God exists. Does that mean we should burn in hell?
Not to mention, it's kind of typical for people to have a double standard when it comes to certainty or proof about God's existence. For instance, they probably will demand, or they might demand, something closer to 100% certainty when talking about the existence of God, when they don't necessarily require that degree of proof for other things.
I will go out on a limb and claim 100% certainty of my own existence. Outside of that claim, my level of certainty diminishes. I'm okay with that. I'm a skeptic.
Like the certainty that the new business they're about to start won't fail, or the idea that the person they're going to get married to is the person they should marry, or maybe starting a family, or getting an education, or getting in a car or an airplane to travel somewhere. We do all sorts of things every day, all day, without requiring 100% certainty as to the outcome. But suddenly when we start talking about God, we want 100% certainty there, and that's what typically people mean when they talk about proof.
True, I go through my day taking certain risks. When I board a plane, I know there's no guarantee that it will land safely. So in that instance, I don't have 100% certainty as to the outcome. But there is evidence that air travel is relatively safe, safer than driving. And as I've already said, I wouldn't need 100% certainty to believe a God exists. What I need is evidence strong enough to justify belief. Getting to the point of your question, I don't know what it would take to convince me of God's existence, but if there's a God, he or she knows.
And then the second question that you're going to want to ask them is, what is it about the evidence we already have for God's existence that isn't satisfying to them? Why isn't the evidence that we already have enough? Why doesn't it provide the proof that they think they need?
But you haven't provided any proof. There are those who will argue that nature is evidence of God, but that's just an argument, not evidence. And even if I did somehow find God in nature, who's to say which God it would be? You're trying to promote Christianity specifically. Even a deistic God could theoretically have created all that there is.
Because the reality is most people have no idea that there's already evidence for the existence of God. They just don't know what it is, or they don't understand it correctly, or no one's ever pointed it out to them.
I don't think you meant for that to sound condescending, so I'll not overreact. I've thought this issue through thoroughly and have considered what you believe to be convincing evidence. I'm also aware of the arguments for God's existence, and I find them all flawed. Again, should I be punished for disbelief? After all, you disbelieve in many gods from many religions and mythologies. That doesn't make you worthy of torture in hell.
And since they don't know that there's already good evidence, you need to know. You need to be able to rattle off a list of the arguments for God's existence.
But arguments aren't evidence. Please tell me that we aren't going to go through a list of arguments for God's existence.
You need to be able to ask them why they don't find the cosmological argument, or the teleological argument, or the moral argument, or any of the other arguments for God's existence satisfying, and get them to tell you what it is about those arguments that they don't really buy into.
Heavy sigh. I'm not going to open up a whole can of worms at this point in the video, but believe me, if there were effective arguments that prove the existence of God to the average person, they would be front and center on every church website in the United States. I would encourage everyone to research the arguments for God's existence and their refutations if you are interested in them.
And other evidence as well, like the reliability of the biblical manuscripts.
Please. The Bible is an important collection of ancient texts. But it's a book that has talking animals, dead people escaping their graves and walking about, Noah's Ark, a man living in a big fish, and a magical tree. And if you aren't aware of it, even Christian scholars don't agree as to who wrote much of it.
Or the evidence for the historicity of Jesus and the resurrection from his tomb.
I agree that Jesus is a real historical figure. But what's more likely? That 3 days after being crucified, a stinking corpse miraculously was raised and regenerated, talked to people, and then flew into the clouds. Or that superstitious ancient cult followers made up stories after their leader's death, thus creating a legend attached to a real person. So, I'm going to wrap up this endeavor. I just wanted to respond to Lori's video. I'm not trying to attack her. I'm sure she's a nice person. I just happen to disagree with her on supposed proof for God's existence. If you think I've been unfair to Lori, be sure to let me know in the comment section. I'm going to leave a link to the original video in the description. Please feel free to share, like, subscribe, or not. Take care.